Hey everyone, welcome back to another Fun Fact Friday live here at University Animal Clinic. I'm Dr. Sam, and so this week we've been seeing a little bit of an uptick in our itchy pets. And so I thought we'd revisit allergies because we don't often think about the fall as a allergy season, but it can as the weather changed a little bit. I mean, we're in Florida. We don't have a whole lot of weather change, but a little bit. And sometimes different plants can bloom. So I thought we could talk about our itchy dogs and allergies. And one of the big components is the difference between food allergies and what veterinarians will call atopic allergies. And atopic allergies is usually environmental. Grasses, pollens, dust mites and dander and those kinds of things can fall into that category as well. And so, unfortunately, here in Florida, we often don't get a lot of seasonality. So a lot of our plants are here year round. So it could be a little bit more difficult figuring out the difference between the two because it's not like these just pop up twice a year. But we do still have a seasonality to when our plants like to bloom. So there is still some change that we could recognize. Hey, this happens, say, 2-3 times a year versus this is a constant issue. But sometimes some of those grasses are just around all the time causing issues. When I think about food allergies, one thing to note is that food allergies really are less than 10% of our pets. Surprisingly, it's not very common. We do have another Fun Fact Friday, I believe, specifically on just food allergies, if you want to delve into that even a little deeper. But really, it's a very small portion of our pets. It's usually a protein, chicken, beef, or soy. And the other common thing is I like to call it the 3 Fs, feet, face, food. So often they're itchy specifically on their face, around their eyes and muzzle, their ears are involved, and then the paws, in between the feet. You have that foot licker, that pet just all night, all you hear is them licking their paws. That is often a food allergy. Not always, but often. And so we can figure that out. There's some tests for that, and I'll get into that in a second. Atopic dermatitis, again, those environmental allergens, most commonly pollens and grasses and things. People assume that it has to get on them, and that's why we worry about their feet. But actually, it's an inhaled allergen. So we breathe those allergens in, those pollens, and that shows up in our respiratory tract. So we assume that since it's on the skin of dogs, it's because they're walking through it. But actually, they're breathing it in as well. It's just that their allergy organ is their skin. So that's where it shows up for them. And so they're breathing in those pollens just like us. And it shows up, most of the time it's all over. It can be the feet and the face, but it can also be the trunk, the body, the belly, the armpits. It can be anywhere for those guys that have allergies to grasses and things like that. So not as specific to the location. How do we find this out? Food allergies is a food trial. It can take 4 to 6 weeks, so it takes some time, and you have to be really diligent because it's very easy for them to accidentally get something they're not supposed to. So no table scraps, no outside treats, and ideally I recommend using a veterinary prescription diet that's specifically formulated where they hydrolyze or break down the proteins so small the body doesn't recognize it as an allergen, so that we can find out specifically, do you have a food allergy? Once we diagnose it, if we want to try one at a time, a different, say, limited ingredient diet, we can. Maybe a salmon or a venison that's a different protein than they're used to and see if they have a flare-up. But to diagnose, I think it works best by using a prescription diet just to be absolutely certain there's no sneaky chicken or something in there with some of these over-the-counter proteins. And that's how we can diagnose a food allergy. Unfortunately, just like people, there's not a lot of great blood tests and things that work well for food allergies. I have an allergy to shellfish, and when I was tested, I had eaten shrimp that caused my allergy, and they tested me and said, you're not allergic to shrimp, but I was allergic to everything else. Lobster, crab, everything. So food allergies are a hard one, even in people. Environmental allergies, how do we test? We can try medications and see if there's response. Apoquel is the most common newer drug because it specifically works at the itch receptor. It doesn't tend to work for food allergies because that has a different receptor. So that tends to work well. There is also a blood test that we can do if you really want to specifically find out which trees, plants, pollens, those kinds of things. And where this can be really helpful is we can also do desensitization just like they do for people, whether it's an oral drop that we put in the mouth or an injection, we can desensitize our pets to some of these allergens. So those guys that have really bad allergies, that nothing gets them really under control, they get better but never really under control, these desensitization really can make a huge difference for these guys and their quality of life and not being so itchy, which can be miserable for all involved, I know. So that can be really helpful to know exactly what they're allergic to, specifically when we're talking about moving on to desensitization, because you need to know those compounds that need to be added into that. So I hope this broke it down a little bit for you, the difference between the two, what you're going to see for each, and how we can help these pets diagnose them. There's different treatments for both of those medications. Of course, the standby steroids works for everybody, but I think we can do better nowadays. Our medicine is so good. We've got better medications out there that we don't always have to use a steroid. So there's better options. So make sure that we talk about it, because I'd prefer them be on something that's great for them long term than a steroid. So if you have ideas for the next Fun Fact Friday, as always, leave it in the comments below. I want to talk about what you guys want to hear about. Give this video a like and share. Share it out to those itchy dog friends that you know. Everybody has one, so share this out to them so that they can know for the future what they need to be thinking about. And we'll see you guys next week.